the Wytheville Town Council meeting Monday, January 22nd, 2024 at 5:11 p.m. We do have a quorum. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilman Gary Gilman.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next is approval of the agenda as presented or somehow amended. I will need a motion, please.
Amen.
I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If I hear none, this would be a roll call vote. Mr. Gilman?
Gilman, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Atkins, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Just for information, we can do a recess around 6 p.m. if necessary. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. I'll need a motion to consent agenda, which is one item, which is the minutes of the council work session and regular meeting of January 8th, 2024. I will need a motion to accept as presented or somehow amended.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is citizens period. Do we have a sign-in sheet? Oh, we're waiting on the sheet. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate you. Yes, sir. So these are students, right? All right, so the first person who signed up, be Mr. Jordan Stidham. Sorry, I apologize for that, sir. You come to the podium and say your name and your address.
Jordan Stidham. I'm the executive director of Open Door Community, 680 West Main Street. So I think I sort of have two items, but I think one of mine is more a later agenda item. So I guess I'll talk on that when that comes around. But there was one thing that I wanted to sort of bring to the council more information-wise is the work that we've been doing with the warming shelter and the community need that goes along with that. So I'm sure, as several of you are aware, we've started a motel-based emergency warming shelter in this community. In the past, we run about 9 what we call emergency shelter rooms. That is funded through the state of Virginia. We've had that for a few years now. And so based on the need that has come up with the increased homelessness, we had a group of, it started out fairly large, but dwindled down to about 7 members kind of repetitively coming each week, planning things out. And we had been trying to get a shelter started for about a year, as I think several of you are aware of and came to the public meetings that we had. And we went with this idea of a motel-based warming shelter versus a congregate shelter. And we started out with about 5 rooms. And our goal was, so when we look at our grant periods as far as like what we consider to be shelter time. We set a goal of funding November through the end of March. And then based on weather, it's kind of done day by day after that as we go into the spring. And so, we were working on the congregate shelter and kept working on it, and it was making a little bit of progress, but we were already in December. And so we shifted to this motel-based model and started with 5 rooms. And we sort of went into it, I guess, before we had the full money. And it was more of a, we're going to do this and then try and get the community to support it. And I will say that the support that the community has given us in the shelter has been like phenomenal. We've gone from 5 rooms per night to 10 rooms per night. And so now, based on the donations that the community and churches and things have given us, we currently have the funding. So what we do is each week we review our budget. So we keep a running donation tally of what we've received and what we've spent. And last week, where the temperatures are so cold, we did 12 rooms. Last week we spent, I think, right at $8,000 on rent for motels. And so each week we review what's come in and what's gone out. And we take the days left in the winter and we divide those. And we determine how many rooms we can do every night for the rest of winter. And so right now, based on that funding, we have enough money to do 9.58 rooms. And so what we do is we round up to 10. And so about 50% of that 10th room, we don't actually have the money for. We're operating sort of at a deficit in hopes, like with, having faith that that money will come through donation wise. And so we're anticipating right now to be at 10. And as donations come in, once we hit, let's say, a little over 10, like 10.2, 10.3, then we round up to 11. So our goal is to push as many rooms as we can through the rest of winter. And so I think last week when we talked about that really, really cold week, between our emergency shelter program that is state funded and this warming shelter, I believe we had 24 people in shelter. And so the reason I bring that up is there is a need that is far beyond our capacity to address. Last week with 24 rooms rented, we had to turn people away. And I hope and I ask that the town and, this is not the county, but I would hope that we can find a way for the groups to come together and increase funding and awareness to address that need, not only in emergency shelter rooms, but also addressing the long-term housing development and incentivizing new units to get people into long-term housing. So.
Thank you very much for that insight. Next on the agenda is Lathan.
Good evening. My name is Lathan Smelser, and I'm here, I guess, on my behalf. My address is 317 Sheffey School Road, and I just wanted to come up here and speak a little bit, following up from what he said. Over the last 2 weeks, I started a little group, and it kind of took off, so that's what brought me here. I was actually I was actually driving and saw a homeless man, and this was when it was freezing cold outside, and I stopped and talked to him, and he told me that he had been sleeping behind the dumpster at McDonald's on the ground. And I thought, oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine. So I'm like, well, let's find some resources. Let's see what we can do, because my heart is, imagine that if that was us. So I started looking and digging, and then I found out about Hope and what they were doing with the warming shelter. And I thought, well, okay, we can get you in here and we'll see what we can do. And that's when I realized that the need was not just him. There was very, very many people in our community that maybe we don't realize need this help. And so I took it upon myself to try to fundraise and get the rest of the people that I knew off the streets and in the hotels. And so that's where we are. And over the last 2 weeks, we've put 13 people up. And so I would say, when I say we, I mean the community has donated to a GoFundMe page that I started to do this. And I think what Hope is doing is amazing. And I'm just trying to step in and be the gap for, like he said, the other people that get turned away. I mean, there's a budget and I get that. I understand that Hope had been asking for going on a year and a half for a little bit more effort for the warming shelter, but there was no satisfaction towards that. After the Holy Trinity Lutheran Church opened their doors to try to open up about the warming shelter, I think they struggled a little bit with getting staff and volunteer groups, so that didn't go very far. I'm here today asking you as elected officials to step up and assure that Wytheville has a sustainable place for those that are homeless, somewhere warm and safe during these periods of time where it's cold outside. Galax, Pulaski, and Marion all have these places, and I'm here to say, why does our community not have this? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Messer. Next on the list is James. James, if you state your full name.
My name is James Shiner. I'm the guy behind the dumpster. You know, I went from my army bed to running around and met this girl, and I become homeless in Virginia. You know, I just asked the town to be a hero. You know, you don't have to have a Purple Heart or 20 medals, or just to be a hero is to have concern for someone else's needs. This lady's my hero. I mean, we asking the town this to help. You know, not necessarily me, everybody. And I'm gonna do what I can do. I'm out 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning giving people the gloves I got on my hands, socks, coats. I mean, by the time I get back, sometimes I ain't even got a shirt on. You know what I mean? It's just have concern for somebody's needs, or listen to their story, or you never know what it may be. You know, just that's all I ask. Be a hero. It's not hard.
Thank you, sir. Next is Denise Davis.
Hi. And I'm probably going to reiterate some of the things you've already heard about, try not to repeat, but we all know how brutally cold it was last week, and I hated to think of anybody having to stay out. I mean, we asked people to bring their dogs in. It's against the law to keep your dog on a tethered leash when it's cold, but, we don't really say anything about the people that are out there. And I was disappointed to hear that our town, our county, had no place for these people to go. And like Lathan said, there were other communities around us that had stepped up and had it. And I think we can do better. I don't remember if you remember, but years ago, when 77 closed down because there was so much snow, and it was years ago because I think Slell Dalton was still the town manager at that time, or the county manager. But those people were trapped on the interstate, and the police went out and picked them up. They opened George Wythe High School and gave these people warmth and shelter and food. But we can't do that to people who aren't traveling through. We can't do that for the people that sort of live here, even though they don't have a home. And I know I'm proud of our town because we spend a lot of money on beautifying our streets and the buildings, but we can't offer the basic needs to people when they could freeze to death and die from exposure. They have nowhere to go. Some people in this room tonight are wondering where they're going to lay their heads tomorrow night. And yeah, it's supposed to get warmer this week, thank goodness, but it's still not going to be warm enough to where we ourselves would probably want to stay outside. And I donate to Open Door and designated my last contribution to go to the warming shelter. And I'm just asking that the town step up and provide some funds for them, because as far as I know and have been told, no money from town council goes to Hope or their endeavors. And clearly there's a dramatic need out there.
Thank you. So there's nobody else that has checked off that they want to come to council. Anybody else would like to step up and council while you're here? Well, I cannot speak for council or administration at this point, but the dialogue doesn't stop here. That's about what I can say. We're going to have some dialogue.
Well, and I know we have had some dialogue before in the past. I did have somebody reach out to me this past week and say, I heard you worked for the warming shelter, and that's totally against. I can't speak for all of us up here, but that's totally not true for myself. I think it's much needed, regardless whether you're behind, I hate to say it, a dumpster or anything like that. I truly agree on that. But I am for a warming shelter.
I am for roaming shelter. Also, it was brought to my attention that I was one of the individuals that was not for roaming shelter. That is not so. I am for roaming shelter, and I think that maybe we should have further dialogue, a work session on how we're going to address the issues that are in our community.
And I think that's something that council we can do is get together with administration and work session. And we have government housing in town that usually takes care of housing. That's not this issue.
Currently, our housing, we don't have housing for people. So we need to come together and try to come up with a solution to the problem. People placed us in office to deal with the community's issues. They had faith in us, and I think that we need to have a work session to discuss on how we're going to address the problem.
I think everybody probably agree with that. Can I get some clarification that the church that was going to do it, they could not do that? Is that what I just heard y'all say?
So the process with that, we had been working on opening the basement of the Holy Trinity, and Holy Trinity was fully behind us using their facility. Their, I guess, would be like their council, their deacons, approved it, and we were planning on, what we had met with the town inspector to see what our capacity would be, and we had determined that our capacity for that, based on the space, would be about 10 individuals. And sort of the big issue we were running into was we had to have one of two options. Either A, we had to have enough groups like sponsor the recurring nights. So group A of whatever, this civic group or this church or whatever the group would be, would say, okay, well, I'll pick up this Monday or every other Monday or every Monday, and so on and so forth. So we needed either recurring sponsors of those nights as far as providing volunteers, or we looked at potentially putting together a big pool of just congregate volunteers. So anybody in the community that wanted to volunteer, we looked at having a pool of that. For that, in order to manage that pool and schedule the days and call people when the shelter's open, we were looking at potentially having a staff position for that. And so really the big difference when you look at Galax and Marion, so Galax is called Elijah's house. Marion is Antioch.
But it's a church, correct?
Right. So yeah, that's the difference I'm getting at, is sort of the different angle was those two places like started in a church who had the space and the congregation who said, we're going to do this. They had a base group and they brought people in. The approach that we were taking is, we're not a church. We don't have a base congregation. We don't have a congregation. I have 12 staff that already work like overtime. And so we're trying to figure out like, how do we structure this where we're starting from a completely different spot? And what I did was, I went out and talked to different groups and kind of just chatted with different organizations. And the biggest thing that we ran into was not that we had a lack of people that care. We have a tremendous amount of people in this community that care. What we were running into was in the groups that we were going to sponsor the recurring nights, you had almost like a population issue. An issue may be the wrong word, but if you look at different groups, the congregations and things like that, they're aging. So they're older and they're not physically able to, or whatever the reason may be, to sit like 12 hours overnight in a warming shelter. And then if you go to the younger population, most people have full-time jobs, kids. And again, the struggle was having people that could devote those 12 hours overnight. We looked at splitting it into 2 6-hour shifts. And sort of the preliminary issue we were having is we weren't getting any feedback of, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. And so then we looked at what would it look like if we just went out into the community and did like an all call. Hey, here's what we're doing. Sign up to be a volunteer. And let's say we got a group of 200 people, 100 people that wanted to volunteer. Then we would have to add a staff person to our team to be able to organize that, schedule that. And if someone doesn't show up for their shift, who do we call in? Things like that. And so we looked at what it would cost for us to bring in a staff position. And we determined that the fact that there are so many people in this community that want to contribute to it, but because of various reasons don't have that ability to give the 12-hour overnights, we thought it was a good idea to go to a motel-based shelter. Same rules, first come, first serve, below a certain temperature, same model, just instead of congregate, it's private. And so the big thing with that was that we didn't need volunteers. So now we're able to go to these groups and to individuals and say, hey, look, $50 sponsors a family in a room. And basically what we do is when our doors open, as they come through the front door, we ask them, how many in your group? Sometimes we have 1, sometimes we have 2, sometimes we have 3. But it's their choice how many are in their room. And so they come through the door and we do it that way. And what we've seen is those same groups that didn't have the population or the ability to sign up as the sponsoring volunteers have been calling me and emailing me, hey, we see what you're doing there. Can we do a fundraiser for you? Can you come and speak? Like I think I've been to 8 or 9 meetings already in 3 weeks just to speak to groups and tell what we're doing. And so I think it's very important to reiterate that there is a huge need. There is a need far beyond our capacity. And as an organization, we're very grateful for the other organizations and individuals that are also helping us, because there is a need to fill that gap. And along with that, though, comes that if we're going to do a congregate shelter, we wanted to make sure that we were going to do it right. We didn't want to just open something up and hope that we get enough volunteers. Just make sure that there's safety for all. And so we tried to look at it from every angle. And one of the big benefits that we've seen with the motel-based shelter is that if a husband and a wife come in together, they stay together. Versus in a shelter, in a congregate shelter, you generally speaking have to separate based on male, female. And then if you have children, they would have to go to us. Our plan initially was to have a budget set aside for families with children. So in the congregate shelter, male and female would be separated. And if you had children, we would put you in a motel. And so we got to thinking, if we have to hire a staff position to coordinate those volunteers, then why can't we just fundraise more? On top of that money, we would have to pay a staff position and just do motel rooms. And so that's sort of how we got to where we are. But Holy Trinity is willing. Pastor Hammond has been a huge partner in it. And like I said, a lot of these organizations that we initially had talked to, and we're kind of hitting a bit of a speed bump of volunteers, have contacted me. They have mailed checks. They've asked me to come speak. And so, there is a huge amount of caring here from the citizens and from the churches and the civic groups. I think the big thing to reiterate is that there is a huge problem as far as us not having enough housing for people. And we've got to figure out how to get more money into housing people in need now, but also how do we build more units so that we can put them in those rentals. So I think those two takeaways are extremely important to keep in mind.
Quick question. Have you quantified the gap that you have between the funding you have and the anticipated need you have for the remainder of winter? So have you put a number to it?
Yes.
I know it's moving.
Yeah. So what we try and do is, like I said before, we update it every week. Every Monday, I rerun our budget based on what's come in. And that's how we went from 5 to 10. Last week we had 12 because of the extreme cold. But like I said, right now we're operating at a bit of a deficit. Each room costs us $50 per night, whether that be one person, two person, three people. And generally speaking, we do check in at 11:30 now. There is, if we've got 10 rooms, there's usually at least enough people for 15 waiting at our door.
I mean, I'm just running quick numbers here, so correct me if I'm wrong. So it sounds like we've probably got 70 days.
Yeah, I think the calculation I did today, I think I used like 73 days.
Okay. And you're at $50 per room, and it's taking, I think you said 12. Is it 12 rooms you're purchasing? So you're
Yep.
600 a night.
Well, we're at 10 right now, but the more we can do,
So
the better.
500 times 60, how many?
73.
73. Somebody help me on the math here.
73.
73 days times 500 a night
Yes.
is about what they're facing, anticipating.
Yes.
And it's going to move on them every week.
Well, if the shortage is 5 for 9, it's 18,250.
There you go. So that's how much money he has, and what do you have committed right now?
So right now we've raised, as of this morning, 14,400, I think.
So $5,000 would get you perhaps.
Well, at that number. But I think, as other people here have said, like, and by no means, like, I want to make it clear, like, we're not the only ones, I guess, in this, I don't want to say fight, but in this. There are individuals in the community. We have a lady that's a part of a church that has done a lot of work with us, and she goes out herself and fundraises, and we actually have a little pot of money that we're tracking for her. And so, like, she'll bring us $300 or $400, and she'll say, put that on my tab. And she'll go out like she does, and she'll find people that have gotten turned away, that didn't make it to our building by the time our vouchers ran out. And then she'll message me on Facebook, hey, I'm sending this person, this person, this person. And then we add it to her tally. So as a nonprofit, we have to spend dollars exactly how they're designated. Like, if you tell me, sure, I want to put John Brown in a room, I legally have to put that person in that room, unless for some reason I legally can't. And then I tell you, hey, I can't take your donation. But to answer your question, we need probably about 5,000 more to do our 10 rooms through March 31st is our goal. But I think, as made apparent, the need is far more than 10 rooms. Right now, 10 is what we're able to do. But, we're doing 10. I think she said she's done.
Just say something. When I say 13, that's just, we've got people in rooms, we've got sometimes 6 people in just because of the money that I've had to put towards 5 rooms, but there's
I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
You need more than,
Yeah, so
Purchasing
just
currently.
because there's, 5 rooms or 13 rooms, doesn't mean there's like 2. So,
And so like if you look at what we're doing, what she's doing, what several other individuals are doing in the community, we could, and we as in a community, we could fill probably 20 at least rooms every night.
Is there any shortage of rooms you foresee in the near future? Or
So-
are they there if the money comes in?
So we haven't ran into a point to where the hotels have said we're full. So we have a contract with 4 motels. They've given us a discounted rate and they've agreed to do our voucher program. So basically we create vouchers. That's like an IOU. And the motel agrees to take that in exchange for money. And then at the end of each week, because we have to do an AP system where we get audited every year, at the end of each week, we take our vouchers that we've given out and we cut a check to that motel for the past week. And so the motels have agreed to participate in that, which is required by our nonprofit and guidelines and things like that. And they've also given us a discount. Now there are more motels than that, but they tend to be a little more expensive. And so, like I said, I think the need wise, we could probably fill 20 rooms every night all through the rest of winter. And that doesn't count the warm weather when people still shouldn't be sleeping outside, but at least they're not going to freeze to death. We also run into issues where, we have people that get a room one night and then for whatever reason, by the time they get to our office, the voucher's already gone. So we start doing vouchers at 11:30. We have people outside our door, and when they walk in our door, we have clipboards for every voucher that we can do. Because, like I said, the need is far beyond what we can do. And so in order to be as fair as we can, and I know fair is not a just word to use when you're sleeping outside, but when people walk through the door, we hand out a clipboard. How many in your family? 2. Okay, 2 people get 1 clipboard. How many in your family? 1. You get a clipboard. And when we're out of clipboards, we have to turn people away. So that's how we do the voucher program.
Those vouchers, the number each time changes as the monetary is there, right?
Yeah. So I said, like every Monday, unless there's a holiday, like we had MLK when we were closed, we did it Tuesday, but every Monday we keep a running Excel sheet. Online, we take donations. We have a program called Salsa that tracks who it's from. And when you donate to us online, there's a little tag on there. It asks you to select where you want the money to go. And so you can choose Hope General, which is unrestricted, or like if you want your donation to go to the warming shelter, there is a drop down where you can select warming shelter. And so that's how you restrict your donation. And so then we take that donation and we have to put it into a restricted fund. And so that restricted fund, we call the Kinser Fund after a donation a family made to us. And so the Kinser Fund, we look at once a week, every week, and we update it from the donations of the past week. And we take that divided by 50. That gives me the total number of rooms. And then I take that divided by the days left until March 31st. And that gives me my per night availability. Like I said, yesterday when I did it, or not yesterday, today when I did it, I think my number was like 9.58 or something like that. And so we round up anticipating that we'll get that money. Because right now, every 10th room we pay for, we only have the availability of half of it. And so we're sort of operating a little bit on faith in a deficit here.
Mr. Freeman, is there, and I know this will sound crazy, but is there some type of account that if town council, however you want to look at it, did like sponsor up to so many rooms, up to like the temperature, coldness, weather that you all require?
yeah, so right now there wouldn't be, there's nothing in the budget. There's nothing in the budget currently. But I mean, you have the ability, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, or make a policy recommendation. But you have the ability to amend your budget, but currently there is no existing account that we could, that's, you know,
Is there some way that us as a council whole that could look into something temporarily until we can all talk about it to get us through a couple of weeks that we might could look at trying to help them? Is that something possible, Mr. Castle, Mayor Taylor, until we can all get together and have like a work session on it to get our ducks back in a row?
I mean, I think you have the ability to discuss that and collectively make those types of decisions. So I think the council has the ability to do that.
Just make a motion.
I think you could.
Let me just clarify what we're, so you're talking about a monetary donation is what you're talking about.
Yes,
now. Until we can meet.
Until we can meet and get everything as a council, where we, because I know we all just can't get together and just talk.
Right.
You know, besides we're
So short, just to try to help you work through this. So short of a budget amendment, if you wanted to craft a motion to that effect, I mean, I think it would have to be something to authorize me a certain amount, and we would create an account, just understanding that you are committing unbudgeted funds.
Well, through the cold weather until we can get together as a council and have a work session, I'd like to make that motion, please. As myself.
You need to designate them.
Yeah,
Okay.
your motion would need to designate an amount, and I would prefer if you make that authorizing.
You want to help me with that? Because you probably wouldn't want my amount if I'm going to throw it out there. Trust me. You might want to reel me in.
I prefer to stay out of that part of the policy, but I want to help you get it on the table.
Steps, like right now, how many,
Right,
we need
that's
5
what I'm at. Right. Yes,
and,
ma'am.
and
Because I had that you had
Child.
you had covered 9.8. That's what I took notes at.
9.5.
And didn't know maybe if we could like cover up to maybe like 16 rooms. And then we may not need a total of 16 rooms. You know, there may be just 13 rooms, and sometimes there may just be 7. But
So
16 rooms is $800.
16 rooms one time or 16 per night?
So
well, I think he said, and I could be wrong. Like they had enough to cover 9.8. So I'm thinking maybe if we could
But that's
cover
per night for
right.
60
Yes, sir.
some days.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
So
How many months?
well, from here until we can have a work session on it.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
let's
Tone it down, right? Yes,
take it
ma'am.
down.
Until we can have a work session on it to try to help
Okay.
the community.
I think my math this morning was 73 days.
You said
Well, I think
73 days?
So just quick
Yeah,
math.
go
So
ahead.
if we round up to 16, he's going to need 6 rooms per night, which is 300 per night times 73 days. That's $21,900.
well, I think Mayor Taylor though had asked that maybe we could have like a work session to try to figure out.
Right, and
Okay.
hopefully, I mean, I did not even know that the woman shelter that the church is doing fell through. And I don't know of anybody in my church that, I know they would all would donate, but I don't think they even know there was a need. So I think if we could, like on my behalf, I can get some money flowing that way. But I would prefer for, just because if we do a lower amount now, you don't have to do it for the rest of the year. You can do it for, the rest of the week or whatever. Then we always have the ability to do
Right,
it
yes,
again,
ma'am.
and we can get in. But I think, with this and just being on video and all that, I mean, that's hopefully we'll bring in a little bit more of that for you. But,
And that is a great idea, and churches and things like that. But I would like as a council, if we could look into that for, may not be the long term until we can all get together and have a work session and try to figure out, what else we can do, if at all possible.
So if you want to make the motion, it needs to include an amount and what you want, and if you want the council to pay for, or the town to pay for that, it would be something to the effect of, the motion is to authorize the town manager to expend up to, or a specific amount.
Would you all like to talk about the amount?
So, quick question. So, I'm going to go back over my math here. So, you said 9.58?
Yeah,
Okay,
Nine
so
point eight, I think.
that was 9.58, roughly 9.5.
9.58, so say 10 rooms per
10.
night, and it's $50
Yep.
per room, so it's $500 a night, right? And so how many days do we have left before we can have a work session?
But I think you have the money to cover almost 10 rooms,
Yeah,
right?
the community has donated enough money to cover just about all 10, and I'm sure that we'll get the rest of the donations to hit that 10.
Okay, so
Yeah, so we're good on the 10 thanks to the community and churches and things like that.
So we're looking maybe about 6 rooms. Does he
6
said,
rooms.
just an estimate. What do you all think? Estimate.
How many rooms?
Yes, ma'am, over 10, because he said he has enough to cover 10. And they may not use 16 total. They only may use 13.
I'd
But my-
It just
say
would vary.
what I'm trying to do the math on is how many nights are you willing to cover until we're able to get in a work session? That's what the point I'm trying to make here, so that we can come up with a total number. So if you cover 6 rooms at $50 for one night, that's $300. So how many days are you going to try to cover is what I'm trying to get a clarity on.
So we'll have another council meeting in 14 days.
14 days?
Approximately every 14 days. I mean, that's not perfect math,
So
but yeah.
6 rooms, it's $300 a night times 14 days would be $4,200, if my math is correct.
14 times 300.
14 times 300 is $4,200.
I'm getting a little bit different. Oh, you're correct. I'm sorry. I punched in.
That's correct.
4,300, is that what you said?
4,200.
So how much do we have in our council fund that we have not used?
You understand there is no designated account. Well, we could pay it out of community contributions, but those are usually down to the dollar on things like the airport, the library, and all those. It's already committed. I mean, that's where we would pay it from the community contributions fund. But I would prefer you all to authorize me to make that expenditure, understanding that it's an unbudgeted commitment.
Well, I'd like to make a motion, please, to see if we could designate up to $6,000, give or take, just in case we can't, in case something happens, we fall through something we all just can't meet, in case, you're sick or something like that, but just up to $6,000 to amend the budget to help with, towards the warming shelter, if need be.
I don't think we could do it as a budget amendment. So what you're basically doing
Just
is
authorizing
you
the
all are
time manager.
authorizing me to spend money that you have not budgeted. Because we can't do a budget amendment without
So
advertising and
Ms.
that sort of
Atkins, the
thing.
motion would be to authorize the town manager to spend up to $6,000 for the homeless
Donation to
Open
HOPE.
Door.
Yeah, there you go.
road door, right? And so that would be your motion, and the town manager is just advising you that those are unbudgeted items. So at some point that will have to be reconciled.
And we do a reconciliation at the end of every year. It's just acknowledgement from you all that we're spending money that you haven't approved effectively.
So I would like to make a motion to authorize the town manager, Ron Freeman.
Wait a minute. Go
Are
ahead.
you good now?
No, you go ahead. I won't get darts thrown at me anyway. You go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I would like to make a motion to authorize the town manager, Brian Freeman, to, I lost my whole train of thought.
That's
So
okay.
you go ahead and make the motion. I had it all.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Got it.
Well, I would like to make a motion to authorize Mr. Freeman for $6,000 to go towards the warming shelter, to try to get us up to speed where we need to be until we can all make a decision as a council to go forth and try to figure out something to do with a situation that the town of Wytheville has. I hope that's good enough, and I'm sorry, I should have written it out, but I didn't plan on it. That's my motion. Sorry.
All right, so we have a motion before us to authorize Town Manager, Mr. Freeman, to allocate
$6,000.
$6,000
Yes, ma'am.
to go towards Open Door or Hope, some warming shelters,
Initiatives.
rooms.
Yes.
Now, will he have to go in on your portal and put that in, or will they send you a check?
You
How will
can-
that
So
work?
let's get through the motion and the vote, and then he can help us with that. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
This is a roll call.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Advisor, it's a roll call.
Roll call.
Johnson, aye.
Wait, she hasn't called for the vote yet.
Huh?
She hasn't called for the vote yet.
Is there any further discussion? That's what they're waiting on.
My question was, how will he disperse the funds to you? Will he have to go through the portal so that it is recorded? How will he disperse the funds to Hope?
So you can do it either through the portal or via check. And so when you're restricting funds to us or any nonprofit, like if you do the check on a memo, you would write warming shelter times X days. Like you would tell us, like you would say, we're funding the warming shelter up to 16 spots for this many days. By doing that, we have to put it into our restricted funds and spend it like that exact way. Because our auditor is going to want to see that check where it says this, and then they're going to make sure that we spent that money that way.
Any other discussion?
I just want to make sure that, I know you all said you all could cover up to close to 10, and then we would make up that difference. Is that what we're discussing? I just want to make sure that's correct.
I think our allocation was for a certain amount of.
Well, it's $4,200, which at $50 a room night basically gives them 84 room nights.
Okay, so it doesn't have
correct?
to be necessarily, if you might need 20, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure. Thank you.
So we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, this will be a roll call vote. Councilwoman Johnson?
Aye.
Atkins, aye.
Taylor, aye. Patterson, aye.
Gilman, aye.
Thank you for coming and speaking.
I mean, I just wanted to say, to kind of tail in that, I think that it is important to kind of note, with the problem that we're having, the amount of support that has come out of the community. I think it's important to note that, because there is a big issue that we have to battle with, but I think there is also a lot of heart in this community between groups like the Rotary Club, churches, but also individuals that take it upon themselves to fundraise and help fill the gap. Like, I think it's important that everybody, get the credit where the credit is due, because there is a big heart in this community. And so, thank you all.
Thank you.
Mayor, I know it's time is up, but can I have this for a second? I came here as a community organizer, but I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I'm taking myself out of my job right now. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for just what you just did. This is something that's been ongoing and discussed for over a year and a half, which does bother me that it took this long to get $6,000. What I'm asking is that the next budget that you come up with, that it is allocated for a warming shelter to be put into place, much more than $6,000, because there's been a lot more money that's gone into other efforts here in town that is not life-threatening. I can remember sitting and listening to a vote for a T-ball renovation, I guess you could say, to be matched with $50,000, if I'm not mistaken. And that's kind of appalling to me. I don't have small children now, but even if I did have a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old that was playing t-ball, I would rather have somebody out of the cold than children running around on a t-ball field that doesn't have a bathroom or um, bushes around it that has been there for years. There's so many other places that could take place. So we have people that are in need, and I'm challenging our council to please put that in the budget, because this is not going to be the only time that we have cold weather. This is not next year, this coming summer is not going to be a time that it might be 85 degrees or above where people are suffering. We have people suffering. And if we can get people off the interstate and bring them here, we know nothing about them. We know nothing that's in their cars. We don't know where they've come from or where they're going. And we have people that are sleeping under bridges. And we have people that are sleeping behind dumpsters, and we're okay with that. Let's get some money in those budgets for this. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on with the agenda. Everybody's good with that. Next, we have a presentation by Fire Chief Chris Slimp regarding the 2023 Wytheville Fire and Rescue Department.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for giving me a few minutes this afternoon, and just wanted to give you guys a just quick presentation, kind of bring you up to speed on what happened in 2023. And you invest quite a bit of money into the fire and EMS system here, and I want you to know kind of where we're going and what's going on with that. One of the first things I did when I came in as a fire chief back in May was to create a vision statement. And there was a mission statement. We took that and kind of improved that. But, if we're going to, if you listen to football coaches that win championships, they all tell you the team has a shared vision. If you hear anything about leadership, if you're going to do anything in leadership, you have to have a shared vision as well. So one of the first things I did was to create the vision that is the vision of the Wytheville Fire and Rescue Department, that those individuals who live, work, and visit Wytheville enjoy a safe and a secure environment while being able to maintain a high quality of life. And that's the vision for our department. And then our mission is we will improve the quality of life for the community by providing excellent emergency medical service, fire suppression, and specialized rescue service, community risk reduction strategies performed by highly trained, motivated, and dedicated first responders. I can tell you we're doing a very good job with that. And as far as especially our EMS system, I'd put up against anybody. Our EMS care is excellent here. And I've worked in 5 localities, and I can tell you it's very, very good here. And a lot of that is I give credit to Everett, Assistant Chief Lineberry, for his work in EMS and dedication. And we've got some really great paramedics over there. And they're challenging me to remember things I forgot years ago. So I'm loving that. But we have some really good folks over there. And and the last thing is just, the things we value that I think are important for us we have to have these type of values if we're going to move forward through this thing and accomplish this mission. Just a few highlights. As you know, you hired me in May. I came here. Since I've been here, we've had several of our folks who have achieved higher levels of certification as far as EMS. We've had 2 or 3 that have gone on up to get their paramedic, and I have 2 that are getting ready to test for their advanced EMT. And then we have 1 more who will have his paramedic in May. I say that pretty confident. He's pretty squared away. And so that's going to help us quite a bit. We've created prior to me, there was some coordination already going on between us and state fire programs and one of our local wrecker services to create a training ground that we're now doing specialized rescue once a year, heavy tactical type rescue. That's we're able to provide that class every year. States coming in doing that, which has been great. One of the things I chased when I got in was we started looking for some small grants to improve our computers and add computers to the fire trucks. We were able to get grant money to do that. We've updated several pieces of equipment, both on the fire engine and our ambulances. And one of the things we were successful that they had actually right prior to me coming in, they got a grant from the Wytheville Bland Foundation to get funding for a bariatric load system on one of our ambulances, which as an agreement, we will answer calls throughout the county with that. Now, I've got a picture of that here in a second. I'll show you. We recently updated ordinances with your help. We've conducted numerous public education and engagement events. We do quite a bit of that, and I'm very proud of that. And we're going to continue that and continue to push that even further into the future. And our EMS revenue recovery, which is what we make off of EMS billing, is at 90% collection, which is beyond outstanding. It's incredible. And I attribute a lot of that to Ashley that works and handles our billing. Somebody's put a plaque up on her door. She's called the grammar and spelling chief. And she returns reports when there's like misspelled or grammar errors, and she reviews those heavily. And that is one of the reasons we have such a great billing collection right there. We're in the process and still are in the process and will be for a little bit of updating all of our policies and procedures, operating policies and procedures. And we continue to be a training ground, which a lot of the EMS classes send their students to. We had a student today. It's not uncommon to come in and have 2 students some days. I had another boy show up today asking if he could do his ride along time with us. I said, sure, that won't be a problem. Everett will fix you up with that. But many of the EMT and paramedic classes throughout Southwest Virginia are sending their students to us to do training, which says a lot for us, I think. That's a couple of the community engagements, just some of the community engagements we did this year. We hit a whole lot of schools. We did several of the community Main Street events. This is a picture of the bariatric system where we can load, and that's for very heavy patients and so forth. And we have a couple that we run regularly, but that was added to the truck back a couple months ago through the use of a grant.
And you said you got a grant for that?
Yes, ma'am, with my own foundation. Yes, ma'am. Just a little bit about call volume. EMS responses were a little over 3,100 this year. With about 80% of that in the town, 20% in the county. And of that, about 1,300 of those were required advanced life support of some type, medications, IVs, drugs, and so forth. Fire responses, 784 of our fire responses, again, about 80% of those are in the town, 20% are in the county. Just some goals for 2024 that we're going to pursue, and we're going to continue to increase our community engagement. I've gotten in with Parks and Recs and trying to talk to the senior groups a little more and get up there and chat with them every 3 or 4 months about fire safety or disaster preparedness, just various things. I was just up there recently and did a talk with them. We're going to continue to work to improve some equipment. We're going to have to replace part of our self-contained breathing apparatuses this year. We're going to work on a grant to see if we can't get that on a grant through the Fire Act. That will open up at the end of this month, and I'll be applying for that to see if we can't get the majority of those paid for through that. Those, years since I started, those have gone up drastically. I got a price yesterday, about fell out of my chair when I saw what they cost now. So, but we do have 12 of those that are going out of date, and we have to replace them. One of the things that we're working toward improving is our in-house on-shift training. A lot of times our folks have had to leave town to take classes, and we're working to try to get more of those here and get more people certified to teach. We actually have an instructor 2 class coming up here in February that myself and I think there's about 8 of us taking that, which will allow us to eventually go teach more things. So we're doing that through all of February. Right now, we're at full level staffing wise, and we're going to hopefully continue that. We started getting some really good applications in when we do have openings, and we already have some folks that are part-time people waiting for us to have full-time openings that want to come here, which is makes me very happy. And again, like I said, we'll enhance our community risk reduction initiatives. Next thing for us is to improve our fire inspection program and get that back on track. We're going to seek more avenues to work with the community regarding fire prevention. And there's a few other things I want to do there too, such as like fall prevention, look at, working with elderlies and shut-ins on, making sure they have people that check on them regularly, those type programs. And then we're going to, again, offer more classes geared toward seniors and those with disabilities. To me, I'm very partial to that. There's there's 4 categories of individuals that are more susceptible to be injured or killed by a fire. That's people over 65, people living in poverty, people living with disabilities, or people under 5 years old. And if you combine any of those things, to say you have somebody over 65, they live in poverty, they even have a greater chance of being killed or injured in a fire. So those are where we're kind of trying to gear some of that. We're going to get out and do some smoke detector blitzes. We're going to do one of those in March, which I'm excited about, partnering with the Red Cross to do that. We're going to try to do 2 of those a year. And really,
And during
really
that time,
excited.
y'all give away smoke detectors? Or how
Yes,
does that
we'll
work?
go door to door. We're going to hit 5 places. We'll let y'all know if you want to join us. You can. We'll be looking for volunteers to help us with that. But going door to door, making sure people have smoke detectors, and if not, we'll put them up, and so forth. So we do that now, but we're going to really get out specific to some places. And like I said, I'm going to try to do that twice a year. Try to do one spring, one in fall. So a couple of things little things we want to do too. We're going working toward. I've been working with town manager on a little funding for an annual banquet and awards dinner. We're working with the police department to do a joint public safety dinner like that. I think we're pushing that out right to the first part of spring. And then we've started talking with the police department and exploring maybe putting together a honor guard, kind of like a flag guard or so forth. We don't have one, but I have several people in the fire department that are interested in that, and PD seems to have some folks too. So we're looking at doing something jointly there as well. Just a couple of challenges ahead, and where there's challenges, there's opportunities. But these are a couple of things, just some things. Demand for paramedics is at an all-time high. I've never seen anything like it in my life. It is very difficult right now with the demand for paramedics. And we were talking to a group of kids I was back in the fall, and they were talking about wanting to go into healthcare. And we were talking about I took a young paramedic with me. Most of the guys that work for me, most folks who work for me are very young. It makes me feel very old some days. But I said, you'll relate to these kids. And, he started talking about other fields you can do as a paramedic, which were great, which never existed when I was coming up as a paramedic. But, even like working on an offshore oil rig as a paramedic, things like that. So there's a serious demand for them now. So competition from other jurisdictions is also creating problems for us when it comes to hiring. I left Marion 24 years ago because there weren't any career fire and EMS jobs. Now there's several. In their jurisdictions, I've lost one to one of the adjoining counties. Couldn't blame her. She could drive 10 minutes to work versus driving 40 minutes. Couldn't blame her a bit. So those are things we're going to see in the near future. Career development and retention of employees is close to my heart. That's something I'm working with the town manager with, and I'm going to be giving him a presentation on an idea I have there, because I really hope will be the place you come, stay, and retire from. And then training, obviously, we have some challenges. Those I think we're going to be able to come. Cost of equipment, and one of the things we're going to have to watch for is a possible reduction in EMS funding from the state. There was a major shortfall in the EMS department's budget that was discovered. We don't know where that's going to go. They canceled the EMS symposium, which was totally unheard of, but there was quite a bit of money, that major accounting issue there, and we're still waiting to see more where that goes. That's still under investigation, but there is some fear that could change the face of Virginia's EMS, especially funding. We're very lucky in this state. We have grants we can chase, and in fact, they'll be open again here shortly. But that is something we're staying on top of. That won't just affect us. I mean, that would affect every locality in Virginia. So that's something we'll need to be watching. Something VML and VACO both need to be watching too, because that could have some serious ramifications if something negative comes out of that. So I'll be keeping you posted on that. I'm staying close to that as much as possible, trying to keep up with what's going on. And if there will be any cuts in budgets or any cuts in potential state funding, I'll be back here jumping up and down, I promise you. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'll just tell you on a personal note, I have loved being back here and working. We have a fantastic group of people to work with. I look forward every day to getting up and coming to work with them. They're wonderful. They're very dedicated. They challenge me a lot of days too, to Some of them call me grandpa. One of them thought I actually had a grandkid. So I tell them all the time, I'm not as old as I may seem, but I have done this 39 years. Last week, actually, I hit 39 years doing it since I first got my EMT, and things have changed a lot. But we do have a fantastic group of people. You should be very proud of what we have over there. I am to work with them every day. I'm very lucky. And I've got to work with a lot of great people over my career, but I'll put these up against any of them. They're really wonderful to work with, and I appreciate their dedication.
Couple
And thank
questions,
you.
Chris.
Yes, ma'am.
Volunteer program. What's your thoughts on bringing back that program?
We've talked about that over there. It's just, will we get them? I mean, so many. That's why we're faced with this problem now of everybody around us is hiring people because you don't have volunteer EMS. Volunteer EMS has just become a non-existent. When I first started this, I could run a call in 25, 30 minutes. Now you run a call, it takes you an hour and a half by the time you do all the paperwork and just getting those people and the certifications. But we've been actually talking about that. Would we get them is the question. And it's just so many people are not seeing it anymore. If you actually just search Google reduction in volunteers, don't put fire department, don't put anything, and you'll see countrywide there is a decline in volunteerism in every aspect of volunteerism. So I don't know if we get them, and we've actually been talking about that.
My next question is, did I cut you off?
I got one more,
Finish, go ahead.
Candace. Ladies Auxiliary, the wives of your workforce. Do you ever think about getting the wives in on programs? And
Well, we've talked about that, but I think several of my folks, their wives actually work and are career fire and EMS providers somewhere doing similar jobs. Okay. So we've actually, I mean, that's something that we could talk about, but a huge chunk of those, I think, are working, doing similar work. In fact, I've had a couple of them coming up and doing training with us. Yes, I believe there's several of them doing it.
Yeah, it was, but it's just a thought.
Yes, ma'am. But we those are things we've all kind of kicked around, especially the volunteer. Could we get them, especially for fire? Because it would, if you had 3 or 4 that you could count on, would be a huge help.
Well, I was thinking specifically for fire, not the EMS force.
But we have been talking about that. Yes, ma'am.
Now, EMS, I used to be on just the EMS because I couldn't deal with blood and guts with the rescue squad. I mean, all my other family can, but not myself. So that was a great idea.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You did mention that you were going to apply for a grant for your self-contained breathing apparatus.
Yes, ma'am. SCBA.
SCBA is what I'm used to saying. So,
yes, ma'am.
So how much how many apparatuses will that grant cover? Will it cover the majority of them?
Well, that's a very good question because we have roughly 26 or 27 SCBAs. 12 are going out a day. We would like to redo them all at one time if we could, because we want to standardize them with what the rest of the county has purchased, because that's who we work with when we have a major fire. Right. So if I just replace the 12 that are going out, I need roughly just under $120,000 to do those. So I'm about certain I could. Well, I should never say certain because grants are a roll of dice, but we would have a very good option, a chance to get at least, I think it's 75% of that funding for those 12.
I know that they're expensive, just from dealing with them in the past.
And I've been working with the town manager on a plan. If we don't get the grant, the money to replace the 12, I think we've already got a part of that. I believe I can already feel we've been working on some stuff there.
You all, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but we're working on a budget amendment that affects multiple departments. And a couple of them would be like where VDOT increased the state maintenance funds. And so there's a lot more money coming our way for state maintenance that we've got to deploy. So when you get that in the budget amendment. And so there's a handful of things that he has. There's an insurance repayment coming back from sewer on a pump that went out. It's checked for like $60,000. So we've got to replenish them. There's a number of little items that we need to put package in a budget amendment for you all. And I'd like to work that through committees and get it to you sooner than later. But I need to work with you all closely on that.
He would probably tell you I drive him crazy about budget
It's okay.
planning.
He already has.
No,
I just, but I am I'm very in tune with the budget and try to look at, 4 or 5 years down the road and, what can we do now and versus what are we going to need? And it's just, I think you have to do that in this day and age because equipment is going just, I was telling the chief back there, I've never purchased a leather helmet. And most of the guys get to be my age who have bought a leather helmet just have always wanted one. I looked at the price there and said, I won't be buying one of those. Price about 4 times what it was last time I looked. I said, this is just crazy. I mean, the price of stuff. When I started this business, an ambulance was $50,000. Now you got about a minimum of 200,000 to that or more. It's just insane what stuff has gone up. It's in a very, unfortunately, expensive business.
I do have one question. When
Sure.
you said you do the ride-along program, how does that work? Is there a contract if someone comes and does the ride-along? Do they sign a contract like a waiver, and are there background checks?
Yeah, they are done by the background checks done by their classes and so forth, and then Everett has paperwork that they sign, and all that's done with the programs. It has to be a program we recognize,
Okay.
and most of them we get are coming out of the Southwest Virginia paramedic program, which is out of Lebanon, and they offer classes Lebanon, Abbott, and Wytheville. So the majority of those, in fact, I'm having a meeting with those folks on Friday, and part of them are taught here. In fact, the majority of several of my people teaching that. So we do all that up front with them, and it's all run through that program.
There is like a contract signed, a mutual contract?
I don't know if I'd call it a contract. I believe it's agreements.
Agreement.
So, yes,
okay.
ma'am.
And y'all keep that on file?
Everett would have all that. Yes, ma'am. That's been done prior to me.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And we just don't randomly let students. They have to be in some program we recognize. And the majority of those are being taught by people we know anyway. And most of the time, it's somebody in our group is going to be helping teach that too. So we're very careful about that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One more. An example. I'm a fireman and I'm under contract for 3 years at my location. I want to come to work for you, but I've still got 1 year under my present contract. Do you ever buy out people's contracts to come to work for you?
We've never had that situation I'm aware of. I haven't.
Okay.
That does exist. I know that exists. I had an employee years ago in another jurisdiction that I hired as an animal control officer, and he had to pay the police department. He was leaving like $3,000. But I do know that exists, but we have not faced that dilemma yet.
Would you entertain that?
Quite possibly, yes. I mean, I'd have to come back. That's opening Pandora's box. I would have to literally.
I agree.
I'd be coming back to talk to y'all and manager and legal counsel about that because it does.
So your question was, would he entertain buying out someone's contract? Have we ever thought about using contracts ourselves?
Yes. I mean, we've had a little bit of discussion. I can tell you, when I worked in county administration, we dealt with those where we had people that would leave certain departments that were under that contract and had to pay back. And sometimes we had to take them to court and sue them. I mean, there's pros and cons to that. But I think back to your question, it would depend, but I would certainly want to talk to somebody before I wouldn't say yes, but before I say no, I'd want to talk about that because it could be opening Pandora's box.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you all. I appreciate y'all's time. Thank you very much. Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is to consider amending and reenacting ordinance number 1428 to include 2 properties in the housing rehabilitation zone. And we'll entertain a presentation by Assistant Town Manager.
Great. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to be short and sweet because I know it's been a long meeting so far, but if you have any questions, please just let me know. I'm happy to answer any I can. We've also got Jordan here who has submitted 2 of the applications before you tonight. So if you have any questions about those developments, he's here to assist as well. As you recall, the council adopted the Housing Rehabilitation Zone program, And we set up the selection committee. The selection committee met last week and reviewed the 2 applications that the town did receive. This evening, you have before you an ordinance, and the ordinance is required to select the potential 2 properties before you. If you look at the very back of that packet of information, you'll see a map. It looks like this. This is the map of the housing rehabilitation zone. So should you approve the ordinance tonight, the 2 properties would become part of the zone officially and on the map. Let's talk a little bit about the properties. The first property is Fairview Townhomes. This property will construct 12 energy efficient green certified townhome units. These units this is a $2.3 million project, and we're pleased to announce that the developer has already secured $1.2 million in grants. 8 of the 12 units will be restricted to 80% AMI, which meets our threshold for the housing rehabilitation zone. But they will go above and beyond, and 4 of the units will be set-asides for critical needs such as domestic abuse survivors, intellectual disabilities, and those will be well below 80% AMI. So with that being said, staff is recommending that this project does become one of the properties in the housing rehabilitation zone. And so I hope that you will consider that tonight. The second property is the Monroe North property. This property will construct 3 separate apartment buildings for a total of 32 apartment units. And this is a $9.5 million project that will be pieced together from various funding sources. The current estimates for the rentals for these would be $700 for 1 bedroom, $900 for 2 bedrooms, and $1,100 for 3 bedrooms. Again, these rent thresholds more than exceeds the requirements for being in the housing rehabilitation zone. And this project is projected to be completed in July of 2026. So with that being said, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. But in summary, I would just like to recommend that the council approve the ordinance to select these properties for the housing rehabilitation zone. Thank you.
So Elaine, both properties are under the one ordinance, is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
All right, so we need some consideration by town council to adopt the ordinance on a first and final reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any questions, dialogue, concerns? We have, back up, please do.
Kind of share a little information, more so to council and just the community as a whole, to sort of understand what our goal is in developments. I think it's important when you talk about AMI and income restrictions to understand what that means. And I will always harp on this for my entire career, because I think it provides basis to why I'm saying what I'm saying. I grew up in income-based housing. I grew up in HUD-funded, like project-based housing, where HUD paid 100% of our rent. And so we were a very low-income family. And I think it's important to kind of rewrite the narrative of how we think about income-based housing. You know, I'm trying to get the narrative away from low-income housing, because that's not, in a nutshell, that's not what it is. It's workforce housing. And so I wanted to sort of provide sort of a guideline, and I'll try and keep it as brief as I can. When you talk about AMI, it's area median income, right? So I just pulled 2022's area median income for Wythe County, which is what the town of Wytheville falls in. And long story short, how you determine your cap is HUD says 1.5 people per bedroom, right? So Fairview Townhomes is all the units are 2 bedrooms. And if you look at 1.5 people times 2 bedrooms, that's designed for a family of 3, up to 3. So we look at what that unit gets capped on as a unit. If you're looking at 80% AMI for a family of 3 in Wythe County, as of 2022, that's $49,000. But people say, well, we don't want that low income. And as a society, as a town, as a nonprofit, as conglomerate across the board, we have to rewrite that narrative. We have to not classify people as low income and not. It's such a wide spectrum. It includes people that are on disability, people that are homeless, people that are unemployed at the moment. We have survivors of domestic violence who right now they're more concerned about getting away from their abuser, and they don't have a job at the moment. But that doesn't make them lesser. And so I think it's important that we rewrite that narrative of what it means to say income-based housing. Income-based housing is just restricting the overall income that a household can make. And if you look at the demographics of Wythe County, most people qualify for 80% AMI. If you pulled up the demographics of this count, our entire service region, Wythe, Bland, Smith, Grayson, Carroll, Galax, most citizens qualify for income-based housing in our programs. 80% AMI for a 3-person household in Wythe County is $49,000. If we look at Monroe North, where you're looking at 3-bedroom units, those are, per our grants, going to be lower AMI restrictions. But for now and future developments, right? So if we go to Virginia Housing, if we go to DHCD and we pull these grants, and like Virginia Housing, they follow the same rule. That's, I think, where she got her information from, was Virginia Housing has a goal of 80% AMI. That's where they want us to target. DHCD, depending on the grant, will ask us for different percentages. Like Monroe North, I said, is a little bit lower. But when Virginia Housing says 80% AMI, if I were to build a 3-bedroom income-based unit using Virginia Housing funding, would fall in this 80% AMI low-income housing, as it's called. A 3-bedroom unit, that family can make $54,000 in Wythe County and fall under that 80% AMI. So I think it's important that we rewrite that narrative. It's not low-income families. It's working class families. It's people who are full-time jobs at factories. It's people who may be on disability. It's people who work full-time at Walmart. It's domestic violence survivors who don't have a job yet. I think it's important that we write that narrative as individuals, not labels. And when you talk about rent limits, we try and target a little bit differently because we're a nonprofit. So when you're thinking about the designation of these projects, by designating us as rehabilitation zone, waiving those fees for a nonprofit, that's huge. For us to be able to get our permits and our tap fees waived, it's gold to us. So we look at what's called HUD FMRs. According to them, 2024, the max rate of a 2-bedroom, affordability-wise, should be no more than $913. Now that's HUD. That's not the 80% AMI from Virginia Housing. And so what we do is we look at that. We look at the income allowed based on the numbers I just told you. So 2-bedroom, HUD says $913. If I pull that number, $49,000, which is what a family can make and live in that unit, and I divide that by 12 and take 30%, because HUD says you should never pay more than 30% to not be overhoused. That maximum rent is $1,200 based on the maximum income. As an organization, our actual goal is to get enough grants, enough waived permits to where our rent is only $750 to $850. We can push it as high as HUD, but that's not our goal as a nonprofit. So I hope that you'll consider those areas and those kind of things as you think about designating our projects towards that. Okay.
One question, George. It says the developer will commit to offering the units for rent at or under 80% AMI for 10 years. Why 10 years?
That's not us. That's what the program has designated. Ours will always be that. Like our DHCD grants, they require, depending on the grant, 15, 20, 30, Like we have a property right now that has a 30-year performance period. And as a nonprofit, when we finish that 30, I'll still be working here, hopefully. We'll run it right back through and put it under another 30-year. Our goal is to provide the spectrum of housing, whether you're on disability or whether you're full-time working in a local factory. I want to make sure that everybody is housed. And so as a nonprofit, we will always fall within those. Even after the 10 years, our goal will be to create that affordability and sustain it.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate you clarifying how it is done. I really appreciate that. I think it gives the public more clarity. And I think we should not look down on it as project housing because everyone deserves some of it.
Thank you.
All right, so as I said, consideration by town council to adopt the ordinance in first and final reading. I think we had a motion in a second on that, correct? All right, so this will be a roll call vote. And we'll start with you, Mr. You.
You on that.
Wake up.
Patterson, aye.
Kayla.
Atkins, aye.
Johnson, aye.
All right, thank you. Next on is to consider the reappointment of Mr. Michael Melton to the Wall of Honor Committee. His term expires February 1, 2024.
Mary Taylor, I know it says on there staff report and presentation by Mr. Freeman, but I think this is fairly self-explanatory.
Right.
Mr. Melton is already on the Wall of Honor Committee and will expire in February, but is eligible for a reappointment.
So I need a motion. I think I have one. A motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Mayor Taylor.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye as well. Any opposed? That motion passes. Next is to consider reappointment of Ms. Mamie Watson to the Wall of Honor Committee, whose term expires February 1, 2024. And she is go for reappointment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, do I have a second? Motion seconds, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye as well, any opposed? That motion passes. Congratulations to both of them. Next on the agenda is to consider an appointment to the Wytheville Building Code Appeals Board to appoint a new alternate member to the board.
Mayor Taylor, right now, the board is in need of 2 alternate members, and there are 2 applicants thus far.
Just one.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Just 1 applicant to that board. You all have been interviewing these folks, and if you would like us to set up something for that, we're happy to do so.
So that's up to council. Do y'all want a meet and greet?
I think maybe to stay consistent, would that be okay?
Whatever we want. All right, so I think, is that okay with the rest of council?
Yeah.
Meet and greet?
Yep.
So for both applications?
Correct.
Is that okay?
No?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you
I
said.
said for both applications. There's 2 people on our list.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
I have that on here. Okay, so you want to do it February 12th before our next council meeting? Meet and greet?
Whatever date's fine.
Okay, with you, Mr. Freeman?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so we'll go ahead and schedule that. Thank you. Next is consideration of appointments to the Budget and Finance Committee and Public Works Committees. And sure. Sorry. Just your voice is so low. So I actually need to, for the work session, for that vote, so I'll need a recommendation to have a work session on the 12th.
At 4:00.
For the
So
interviews.
we need to vote on it.
On the meeting.
Yeah. Motion,
So moved.
second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye as well. Any opposed? That motion passes. All right, next on the agenda is consideration by town council to appoint a new alternate member. So we already did that. Consideration of appointments to the Budget and Finance Committee and Public Works Committees.
Mayor Taylor, just a quick word here. This was something that I asked you all to think about, even though we typically reorganize following an election per our code. This is something that I am recommending to you all, and I think it will be beneficial to us all to reorganize a little bit, get into some different pairings, and begin to improve the way we function and the way we operate. And I think I would recommend that we appoint Ms. Johnson and Ms. Pattison to the Budget and Finance Committee. Of course, you all will have to formulate this into a motion, but this is my recommendation. That Pattison and Johnson be on the Budget and Finance Committee, and that Gilman and Atkins be on the Public Works Committee.
So council, do we have a, anyone who wants to put that in words and it's ready.
Motion.
We have a recommendation?
You'll need a motion, yes.
Yeah, motion. A motion, do we have a second? Motion, a second. Is there any further discussion?
I would like to have a little bit of discussion. I would like to make a motion, I don't know if this is the correct time, that like next roll around, that all appointments of members to either the Budget Finance Committee and Public Works be discussed by council and made by council next go around. And I'm perfectly fine with this going.
I think we've got off track with some of it with when they changed the voting. So I think that's a good idea that we talk about how and when we're going to do things.
Right.
Right. So I think everybody would be in agreement with that. All right, any further discussion?
So
But
you'll first need to deal with the initial motion, and then it's after that initial motion's done, you can certainly make subsequent, but then you can't make one in discussion. So we've
I'm sorry, I
I
just thought maybe
No,
a discussion.
no worries.
Okay, thank you, sorry, apologize.
So you're dealing with the initial motion that was made and on the floor. It's just the appointment of as recommended by Mr. Craig.
And you did
I did the first one.
Mr. Gilman, did you need the second?
He did.
He did the second. We're waiting on the all in favor.
And-
Gilman and
Atkinson.
Okay, so do we have,
That's the motion.
so we have a motion. I'm sorry, this is just,
It's all good, we're going with it. It's good.
Just smile, Mayor Taylor.
The
Just
motion
smile.
is for Ms. Johnson and Ms. Pattison to be appointed to the Budget and Finance Committee, and for Mr. Gilman and Ms. Atkins to be appointed to the Public Works Committee. And you had a motion from Ms. Johnson, and the second was by Mr. Gilman.
we have motion second, and then we had some dialogue. So now we're going to go for a vote. So we're going to do a roll call vote. All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries.
Now is my turn, sorry. I just want to make sure I do it right, and I apologize, but I would like to make a motion for next time we do this, that council discusses it, and for all appointment positions for like budget, finance, and public works, that be made by council, if at all possible.
So you're asking for a work session prior to doing?
No, ma'am, just like that we all can discuss it and see how.
Do you mind if I weigh in, Holly?
No, I don't mind.
Just because I think you and I've talked about this. I think, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but I think that it relates to the code about appointments to committees. And I think you're asking that all appointments to all committees, including budget and finance and public works, be voted on by the council. Historically, these two internal committees have not been voted on. I don't know I can't tell you exactly why, one way or the other. I have ideas, but I think that's what you're asking. Is that correct?
Pretty much so in a
Okay.
nutshell.
So,
Okay.
no pun intended.
Sure.
So historically, people have not followed the guidelines.
I don't know that
Correct.
that's exactly. It's. I think it's nuanced, but and I would just put it to you this way. I think it is a little bit challenging for. I don't want to make legal interpretations, but I don't necessarily think it's not been followed. What I think it is with the internal committees, that is different than sending the council, somewhat representatives from the council outward to District 3, to Housing Authority, to these. That's a totally different scenario versus you all organizing yourselves internally. One of the things I would say about that is the challenge with doing it the way you're saying is that it practically, and I don't know what your position on this is, but disallows the mayor from serving on an internal committee, which is a little bit. Does that make sense? Typically, the mayor has made those appointments because the mayor was not on those committees.
Right,
So,
but in
right.
the information that I handed out previously, it says that the mayor is only to assign to special, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have that before me, special committees such as committees in the community, special needs children, those types of committees.
Yeah, let us do a little research. Paul and I will put our heads together and give you all an interpretation of that. But I think what
I'm just going
sure.
with the handbook that was given to me, that the paperwork that was in there.
Yeah, and part of it is looking at that versus town code and stuff. And I think we'll take a look at it. But I think what Ms. Atkins is saying is, regardless of what our interpretation is, you would like it. I think don't let me put words in your mouth. You would like it codified, essentially, that budget and finance and public works require a vote of council.
I think council needs to be part of the discussion. I do, because, us, and not leave town manager or assistant town manager, not mean anything like that, but just to be able to discuss, hey, I want this, I'd like that, I'd be interested in this, and, things like that, to have some type of discussion besides, or put it in the bingo ball and draw names. I don't really care, but I want it to be fair.
So in other words, we would need to have a work session so that everybody's on the same page, so that you don't have this person over here meeting with this person and then everybody trying to relay the
I
information.
think a work session.
A work session would be good, so
But I
that
don't see
everybody's.
urgency to it. I mean, because we already got one coming up in a couple of weeks, so.
Well, and Mr. Freeman and I, we've talked about that. I mean, I'm good for this year.
Right, this is for the next, from here on out, the next year of assigning committees. Let's just have a work session and all be on the same page and work together.
But we're going to wait to what he comes up with, right? The recommendation.
I have not examined your portion of the code with regard to this issue because I wasn't aware this issue was coming up. So I don't know what town's code says with regard to appointments. But the motion that's on the floor right now is to have council approve those. If it were to turn out that's in violation of code, then certainly be able to advise you if we could deal with that down the road. But I don't know, because I didn't know this issue was coming up, and I just don't know about that provision in the code. I'm happy to research it for you, but I just don't know off the top of my head.
So we can come back and amend it if need be.
Yes, ma'am. I can certainly review it. If I find it's in violation of some existing code, I can certainly let you know. And because you're not going to be enacting this for a period of time, it's not going to go into effect for a period of time because I understand you've got to finish out this year. So,
is this okay for the motion? For all committees, boards, authorities to require a vote of the council.
Well, the motion was for those two specific committees. Now she can amend it. That's what the motion stated.
I think all the other ones already. It's been understood that all of the committees, you all. I don't know if you all have been voting on those or not, but I think you all. The idea would be that if the code requires that in January of next year, that's what we'll be doing. That's what I would say is if the code requires that, that's what we need to do. And we will. Okay. And that's why when I asked for this committee to be switched around, I also recommended that you all vote on it. so that we're going ahead and taking that step in that direction to make sure that we're covering our bases.
And if we
Yeah.
don't meet code this time, you'll let us know?
Yes, I'll review it now that I know this is an issue and ensure that everything's.
Well, I didn't mean for it to be an issue. I just want things to sort of.
I don't have any belief that it is. I just can't tell you that I've
No, that's
reviewed it. And honestly, because I haven't.
Thank you.
Motion.
So
I don't-
the motion is for the Budget and Finance and the Public Works Committee to require a vote of the council. Okay.
That's what she said.
So,
Just a second.
so is this one we're talking about the work session?
Well, you can certainly do a work session to decide what your decision would be if this motion were to pass.
Well,
And Paul, do we need to figure out how, if that vote is taken, how do we need to codify that somehow?
We may very well. That's what I'm telling you. I don't.
Yeah, I think we're.
We've done this.
Could we not wait on this motion?
I mean, I
See
can
what I'm
totally be
saying?
ready to deal with this motion next session if you'd like. So I can tell you exactly how to do it.
Do you see what we're getting at here? So even if you vote for that, we need to make sure that that doesn't get lost somewhere, right? And I think that the best way to do that would be to codify it if it's necessary, or to clarify what's already there to say it's already the requirement, or if it's not and you want to put it in there, we bring something back to you at a later date. Does that make sense? Because even if you take a policy position on it now, that's sort of, it's going to be in the minutes, but we need to get it somewhere where it's a little more discoverable and easier to reference. Does that make sense?
The cleanest way to do it, if you would be so inclined, would be to let me research it and report back to you, put it back on the agenda in 2 weeks.
okay,
And
so,
I can certainly.
so don't set the budget, the appointees yet. Is
No,
that
no.
No, just on your new motion with regard to future,
Right.
in the future. If you'll give me the time to research it, I can tell you exactly how to do what you want to do, and I understand what you want to do.
Yeah.
I didn't know this issue was coming up, so I haven't reviewed that.
Well, and I apologize. I don't mean to be an issue.
You're not.
And not with anybody. I just want it to be fair and from here on out. So,
Sure.
but that's fine if you want to research it, and then if we find out it's different, then we could rearrange next time. I mean, like in 2 weeks. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, what I'll do is I'll come back to you and tell you how to implement this desire that you have and that council has to require council approval for the appointments to those two committees.
But just to be clear, Holly, you all just did what you were asking to be done. You did just vote on it. So
I'm saying
what you're,
if it's wrong, then what do we do?
If it's wrong, I'll help you cycle through that. Okay.
But I mean, that's
because that's already done, and no huge deal, but we'll cycle through that. If it's an issue, we'll cycle through that. And I'll research and have it ready for you guys in 2 weeks how to do it. Does that sound okay?
So to make sure that I'm clear, the vote that we just took on the Budget and Finance and Public Works,
It's
if
in
it is
effect.
not,
it's in effect, and I think it's a
Huh?
perfectly legitimate vote.
Saying it's in effect.
Even if it's
What
wrong,
she
it's
had
in
was a
effect.
different.
It's not wrong.
Well, no, I'm just saying if you know.
can one person speak at a time, please, so I can have clarity on what is going on? Mr. Castle, I ask a question, can someone answer that question, please?
You've already had a motion to adjust those two committees, and that motion passed. So that is in effect.
Okay.
What we are talking about, me researching, is for in the future to ensure that we codify it or place it properly into your code to ensure that it's there for all future reference. That's what both Mr. Freeman and I are talking about, is ensuring that we get it placed into the code for future appointments, that those will be approved by council.
Thank
So that's what I'm asking you to give. I'm not asking you to reconsider your prior vote. I'm asking you to give me time to the next meeting to just get that done right for you. And I will come with a recommendation to you on how to do that. It may be necessary to do an ordinance to amendify your code, and it may not. It just depends. I just need to research it. So I'll come back to you in 2 weeks, and if you'll just continue this on your agenda or place this on your agenda in 2 weeks, I'll have an answer for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay?
Then we're ready to move on. We have still a motion on the floor.
I think you've already voted,
You
right?
voted on, no.
Is
I'm
there-
sorry.
Still a motion on the
Sorry.
floor.
Do you have a
I'm
second
sorry.
yet?
No.
So that's what you need to decide if you.
All right, so. Ms.
Oh, wait a
Atkins,
minute. Yeah.
Conversation or
And I'm sorry, I am not trying to be difficult here. I promise. No, I promise.
All right. So you made a motion for us to get together and meet.
She made a motion for the committees in the future to be appointed, the two committees to be appointed by council. That was the motion she made. And I don't think it's been seconded.
So we have a motion, have a second. Is that yes?
Huh?
You're doing
I
that?
said second.
Okay. So, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? This is what we just had, some discussion about that. Hearing none? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
I have a question, and I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, Mr. Freeman.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. So I can pull what I asked, right? And then just say, okay, let you research it, and then we'll go for next week, correct?
Yeah, what you'll need to do is vote down this existing motion if you don't want to go on and enact that now and wait on my advice. On the other hand, if you want to go on and enact it anyway, then you would pass the motion. So at this point, if you want me to research it and get an answer back to you before you enact it, then you have to vote it down. If you want to go on and enact it, then you have to approve it. And those are entirely your decisions.
Well, I would like it to be done right, and if we just voted on something wrong, I would like to correct that when we come back. That's my opinion. So I will pull what I asked, and if you could research it would be great, and then bring it around would be perfect. Is that okay?
Yeah, so what you guys just need to do is go on and have the vote. And if you want to do that, I would recommend to you that you vote no. And then I'll come back next week and in 2 weeks and tell you all the things that I've promised to find out.
Okay, so all in favor? Maybe I should do a roll call vote. See?
No.
That was a no, that's a no?
No, Councilwoman Johnson, the motion is on the floor. And we're either gonna vote on it or not. So,
So you said aye,
no.
you said nay? No?
No. There you go. The noes have it.
All right, so we entertain that. So, all right,
And let me just say, I apologize for asking to say after, but I'm sorry. I just needed to know right.
next on the agenda is staff report by Town Manager Freeman.
Mayor Taylor, just one thing I want to mention. January the 9th was Law Enforcement Recognition Day. And when I came in here on January the 8th, I did not realize that. And I feel like I passed them over. So I want to roll back the clock 2 weeks and say Chief Ash and his folks, also the Virginia State Police, the Sheriff's Office, Rural Retreat Police Department, all those that work with our folks, extend a big debt of gratitude and a thank you to all of them. And my apologies for not getting ahead of that recognition last Monday night. That day was actually on Tuesday, and I just did not recognize it. But I wanted to roll back and say thank you to all of those folks. That's all I have, Mayor Taylor. Yeah.
Good, thank you. Upcoming meetings by Chief Deputy Clerk Randy Jones.
The Joint Industrial Development Authority will meet on Thursday, January 25th at 3 o'clock here in the council chambers. The Homestead Museum Advisory Board will meet on Friday, January 26th at 10 o'clock at the Jackson property. The Wytheville Planning Commission will meet on Thursday, February the 8th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. The Tree Advisory Committee will meet on Thursday, February the 8th at 8:30 a.m. in Conference Room A. And the next council work session will be held at 4 p.m. on Monday, February the 12th, prior to the regular scheduled Wytheville Town Council meeting at 5 p.m. here in the council chambers.
Thank you. Under other business, we have council member time. Mr. Gilman.
I have nothing at this time.
Just a big shout out to the town employees. They've done an excellent job for the last 2 or 3 weeks with bad weather, cold weather, broken pipes, and I commend their efforts. They've done a great job. Thank you.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Actually, I have that on my note. I want to thank the Public Works, Fire, EMS, and Police. I'm sure y'all are crazy in the horrible weather conditions, and thank you for getting the streets cleaned, people where they needed to be, and emergencies taken care of. Greatly appreciate it.
Councilwoman Johnson.
I would like to say thank you to our Public Works Department. They do an outstanding job. I saw them out. They were working hard, and they were mindful and watchful to the vehicles that they were passing. Even though they had vehicles turning in front of them, they were very cautious in their proceedings, and I'm thankful for that. And thankful for our police department, for National Policeman's Day, and our fire and rescue, everyone that had to respond out in the cold. It's not fun being out in the weather. So thank you all for all of your responses.
I don't have anything this evening as far as that goes. Is anybody, council committee reports? Does anybody want to for District 3? Is there anything District 3 or the Housing Authority? Anything from Homestead you guys get ready? Any else committees you want to? All right, so council now feels it necessary to go into a closed meeting pursuant to 2.2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel pertaining to probable litigation. I need a motion.
So move.
Motion. And second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. As well, any opposed? All right. We Council is now in open session. We feel it's necessary to reconvene into open session by stating that the town council is now in open session. A motion is necessary to certify that only matters lawfully convened to open session were discussed.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I just will be a roll call vote. Councilwoman Johnson? Aye.
Atkins, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Allison,
Gilman, aye.
We're now in open session. There's no other business to come before us this evening, so we're going to adjourn.
Thank you all.